Hey everybody, this is Fran from the 5 Minute Modeler. Today we've got a special challenge for everyone. This is an easy project that takes minimal effort with some scrap materials you likely have around your layout and some minimal scenery materials. The basis for this project is one of these. This is a building foundation that usually comes with most structure kits. If you're like me, you may not use these all the time. I frequently make my own foundations and then toss these into my spare parts bin. Our railroads typically represent a place in time. In my case, it's the early 1970s. This means there was likely a world that came before. When we add buildings to our layouts, they create a scene where people work, live, or play. The building tells a story, and the type of building writes the script. We can imagine what goes on there pretty easily. And then we move on to the next scene. But today's challenge is to create a building that was, rather the remains of a building that was. The remains of a building speak to the fact that something or some people were here before. What did they do? Where did they go? What happened here? These questions add visual interest as well and demonstrate that the scene has an additional history that we don't quite know. Sometimes less is more. We're going to build the remnants of a torn down or demolished building. Think of a building that may have burned down or was falling down or torn down, maybe the start of an urban renewal project or something like that. You don't need a lot of space for this type of building, nor do you need roads to access it, because likely the world has grown up around it. I found a space on my layout. This happens to be at the south end of my yard. I imagine that this is all that remains of an old yard tower. You can come up with your own story. Once you've found your location, set the foundation in its spot, then using the plaster of your choice, bring the plaster up to the foundation as well as on the inside of the foundation. I happen to use pre-mixed drywall mud often, and as long as it's not put on too thick, it won't crack. Once I place the plaster around the foundation, I use a wet 1/2 inch wide paintbrush to smooth out the plaster without making too big a mess and getting it all in the right places. If the space you are placing the building already has scenery, you can trace the outline of your building foundation and chip or scrape away the scenery materials underneath. Now, I've used many different scenery methods, and there's no perfect or right or wrong method. You can use earth-colored latex paint across the dried plaster, then using a combination of soil, sand, dirt, various shades of ground foam, and sprinkle it around the site. Doesn't matter. Anything that you use is fine. Using coarse ground foam, maybe some static grass, you can add scrub brush. But once you've done that, and you've glued it down and you've let it dry, you can start to add additional details to the scene. And this is where it comes alive. I have this cup of scrap material that I collect. These are just little pieces of parts of kits and things that I've been working on, and I just toss them into this little cup. And I mix a little rust-colored paint in it every so often and let it dry out, and now I have these little scraps. I layered in these scraps along with some additional scraps of strip wood, a pallet, and things like that. I then used these stones that I sifted out of some play sand to create a fire ring. They might be a bit too big, maybe I'll replace them. I placed a few others around the site, and then I secured all of the debris with some common diluted white glue, which I used with my scenery. I add a bit of isopropyl alcohol to it. It helps it to soak in. Once dried, it was time to dirty up the place using some chalk pastels. I love these. I've had this set for over 30 years and it's still growing strong. I use a stiff paintbrush where I've cut the tips of the bristles off, and I brush various earth tone colors around the scene. And there you have it, a visually interesting scene that makes the viewer ask, what happened here? I hope you found this interesting and helpful. If you decide to take this challenge, or if you have already created a similar type scene, share it in the comments section. We'd love to see it. Well, thanks for joining another 5 Minute Modeler. Have a great day and great modeling.